And welcome back to another episode of the Chatty Ramble. So, today, my guest is Natasha, who is based in Canada, who's already got snow. We had a flurry of snow yesterday, and they've got snow already. It can stay in Canada because I really don't want it in England because England and snow are not a thing. Anyway, Natasha, welcome to the Chatty Ramble.
Thank you.
Before
Thank
we came on, we were talking about the trials and tribulations of mothers.
you.
So just to give you an idea, I've been trying to show my mum how to use Zoom this afternoon. She had a problem with her printer and she wanted to, she couldn't print something. Oh, the margins won't work. So I got her onto Zoom. Oh my God. That was a whole experience all of its own. And we were talking about how, spiritual gurus have all their shizazzle figured. We were just saying how we don't.
We're all
It's
work in progress.
we're always a work in progress. So, Natasha, we were saying about so before you came into spirituality, you had a very grown-up job, didn't you? You were in a corporate. So what was your corporate title or role or whatever, and how did you come into spirituality?
Well, I started in marketing, so I went to school for hospitality marketing, proper, you could say mainstream education. And then my pinnacle title was executive director of marketing. So I was promoting destinations, promoting hotels, encouraging tourists to come to the destination I worked in. And it was beautiful. I mean, I traveled, I loved it. My colleagues were great, but every Sunday night it started to become like my soul was, oof, I don't want to go to work. Or, oh no, I'm going to be trapped in this office now for the next week. And it started to become louder, that little nudge, internal, like, oh, I didn't really like this. But it was a good money and I just persevered and just kept on going. And it was also because that's what I was taught. My family was like, no, you go to university, you get a proper job, and that's what you should do. That's what we do. And then I was getting RSI, it's like a repetitive strain injury from using the mouse. And the physiotherapist couldn't help me. And finally he said, you know what? I think this is an energy thing. And I was like, what? This is something new. And he said, I'm going to refer you to an energy healer that I know. And, she can probably help because I think this is emotional. I was like, okay, sure. I was willing to try anything because the pain was going up the neck.
Oh.
And yeah, she didn't, it's not that she didn't do anything, but I remember I would sit across from her across the room, and she just worked with energy, and I could feel my head would be going this way when she'd work on it. Anyway, she cured the RSI. And then I was like, oh, wow, what is this amazing thing of energy?
Magic is
I
magic.
imagine. And she was quite clairvoyant too, so she would tell me things about my relationship I was in, and I was like, what? This is weird. And then she did a workshop, a Qigong workshop. And so I thought, I'm going to join that. And from then I was like, I was hooked. I was like, I did Qigong, I did my Reiki levels. I took any workshop that I could about anything energy related, spiritually related. And I did that for about 10 years, still in the corporate world, and still like,
You are leading a double life then. You have
I
your
was.
secret spiritual life over here.
I was, and then I remember, everyone starting to feel a little disconnect too from colleagues because they were still in that very corporate world and the 3D world, and I was starting to learn about beings and helpers and angels, and I was like, oh, I'm too scared to tell anybody about it. I was so nervous. But finally, it just got to the point where, and at this point, I was moving throughout the world as well. So I first learned about it in Amsterdam, then I moved to Dubai, then I was in Macau, and then I was taking all these courses in Hong Kong. And finally in Macau, I said, you know what? I've been practicing my Reiki on everybody, friends, and because it was still secret, I was just like, oh, I don't want to tell anybody. This is weird. And
Covert operations, isn't it?
it is. She's like a weird one. And I had a few friends that would make jokes like, oh, when are you going to start levitating with all these courses you're taking?
Oh, boring.
Oh, I know. And I was just like, oh yeah. Anyway, I just go on, put my head down and go on and do it. And then finally I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to quit. I've saved enough money and I'm going to do this as a career. I'm going to start working on gas clients, start opening myself up to work with clients. I moved to Thailand because I thought that's going to be a nice spiritual place to set up. But of course, it's not just, oh, I'm ready to do my energy healing and my, oracle card readings, but you still need to market. You still need to promote yourself. No, I didn't know anybody there. So it was a very scary time to, well, leave the corporate world for sure. At that point, I was ready to leave. I was like, okay, enough. But then I was like, oh, here I am in this brand new career. There's no boss over me. There's nobody who's telling me these are your targets, your deadlines. I have to be responsible for my budget. And it was a learning curve, but I was so happy I did it. That was in 2017, and I've never regretted a single day. Now I can't even imagine the corporate life again. It's just so draining.
No. How long were you in Thailand for?
2 years, 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
In
you knew nobody, started a new business.
yeah. And yeah, and just I was just like, okay, let me find, thank God there was still social media and Google, and I could look up things like where's there a market, or what's it, like a yoga studio which might have some kind of spiritual aspect to it, or a holistic store. So I got to know people, but it was very slow going. And I remember being so nervous with my first paying client. I was like, don't look at me when I do your reading. you know, Here, lie down. I'll do energy healing, but we'll do the reading at the same time. And that was part of my path. I've now realized, like growing up, I never had a voice at home. It was bullying. My mom was very controlling, and it was her way or the highway. And I'm an only child, so I was, became a people pleaser. And I'm now doing this job where my voice is what I use all the time. Even when creating meditations. And so at first I was like, don't look at me, clients. Let me do the energy healing and I will talk while you have your eyes closed. I don't do that anymore, but that was the learning curve. Like, I have to get that confidence in myself.
Isn't it interesting that so many women, I come across this with clients, and we do it, I do it with with retreat work as well, that so many women don't have a voice, but it's not just generational, it's ancestral.
Yes.
It's huge. And so many of us carry that. It's been coined the witch wound, hasn't it?
Mhm. Yeah.
And how we carry, to speak up is dangerous, to have a voice, to be seen is dangerous. And it's something that we've carried through generation after generation, lifetime after lifetime. And more of us now have come to that point of going, I know, enough now. Line in the sand.
Mhm.
I need to actually look at this, do the healing, do the clearing, understanding, acceptance, whatever it is for that person.
Mhm.
Because all it does is keeps us small, doesn't it?
It does. That's the perfect way to put it. Is you feel small and you want to hide. And I was so shy growing up too, and yeah, now it's still out of my comfort zone a little bit. Like we said, we're a work in progress. Even if I do
Always.
stuff, I'm a little. I mean, I'm still nervous before it, and even in corporate world, like I would do presentations, but I was still like, "Oh, please don't look at me." It was. So yeah, you're right. It's ancestral for sure, because I can see it. In my mother's childhood, in her sisters, and everything, and that's probably the best thing that came out of coming into the spiritual world, is rediscovering my voice and who I am and what I'm doing, and breaking
Mm.
patterns. Right. Mm.
And a part of doing this, and I see it with so many women, and a part of that discovering the voice is actually based in empowerment, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Because
Absolutely.
you can, when you have your voice back, you can, you start to feel empowered,
Mm-hmm.
and you then, bit by bit, you begin to overcome obstacles. And what I've found really interesting, particularly with the voice work,
Mm-hmm.
is there's like levels of blocks around voice work. Now there's some people that really can't speak in public, don't like speaking in groups, well, fine on one, but they don't like anything bigger than that. Yeah, give them a microphone, my God, they can bout out a tune.
Oh yeah.
um but then there's the other side where women can be quite confident and quite chatty until they're challenged. Then they shut down. And it's really, I find voice work particularly really interesting, is that the levels of where we're blocked on our voice work because we've either been shut down or we don't like how we speak. I can't stand my voice, but it's, get over it, Caroline.
Exactly.
You're always on podcasts or something, so get over it.
I know, I find it odd to listen to my own meditations. I'm like, oh, that's you become so critical. I was like, oh, I shouldn't have paused there. Oh, my voice sounds weird. Yeah.
Completely. And I think so many people dislike their voices. And again, it's all that learned, isn't it? That learned pattern and behaviors on how, yeah, and what we say and when we say it, or how guarded we are
Yes.
on
Well, it's
what we
linked.
don't, what we do or don't say around certain sets of friends or family.
Mhm.
I find it really interesting because if we owned our whole voice completely, we'd be unstoppable.
Absolutely. It's linked to our self-worth, our confidence. If we didn't worry about what people thought or what we're going to say, the impact yeah, we would be just marching in the world and just like belting out whatever's on our hearts and our minds. Um, yeah, it would be such a different world, I think, if we didn't
Yeah.
have that self censoring, I guess, is what we learn as children, I think. And I don't want to blame, it's not all our parents' fault, they're also products of their certain environment, but it's also society. I remember it's like, no, when I grew up, it was like children should be quiet. And I remember though, up to 7 years old, I was singing in front of family and dancing, like things I learned at school. And then after that, it's like you can get a peep out of me. Not in public anyway. So yeah, it's really incredible how much we shut ourselves down. And you're right, a lot of people I work with, you can see in the past life there's some witch persecution or even just persecution. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be a witch, just any kind of persecution or being put down or suppressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm working through that with my own ancestral lineage, so the maternal side.
Completely, because women historically were chattels,
Yeah.
an object, weren't they? They were owned.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what culture you were in,
Mm-mm. Yeah.
women were an object that was owned
Yeah.
and were expected to behave in a certain way. So take out, even if you take out the witch hunter trials, so the witch trials, women for centuries under Christianity, particularly across all cultures, not just Christianity, but
Mhm.
women were owned,
Yeah.
and they were had to do as they were told and seen and not heard. And nice women or nice girls and polite women didn't do X, Y, and Z. It's like, God, I must have been such a rebel in past lives.
I think so too. I think so too, because now if anyone tries to stifle my freedom, I'm like, back off. It's really triggering. And then you really can look at the pattern throughout. And I'm like, I need to be completely free. Don't trap me. And I think that was part of the corporate life because I was trapped. Well, I wasn't trapped, of course, I could leave an office, but I had to be in an office 9 to 6, Monday to Friday. And it was just, it's stifling. Yeah.
It is stifling because if it is, yeah, and for many people, having that regular 9 to 5 income is like, oh my God, that's just so what I need.
Mhm.
But there also comes a point, I think, in life when yes, it's this that stability, isn't it? But then there's that the soul craves so much more, doesn't it?
Exactly. Yes. It's crying out for more. It's like that's money. The financial security is helpful for sure, but it's not everything. And I find when you get on the path, because my path was, it's not like, some people have a near death experience and they're like, "Oh, I'm psychic and this is, everything changes." No, it was very gentle and slow and opening, but yeah, it was the right progression for me. And as I did more Reiki, and with Reiki you do practice and then meditation and the courses, and it just opened up so much more. And now I still have bills to pay, of course, but I trust that this is the right path, and I can still support myself. So I try not to worry about it too much. because when you worry, then it's like a blocking the manifestation. But yeah, sorry, I think I went off on a tangent, but
that is the chatty ramble.
okay.
That's exactly what happens on the chatty ramble. So before we came on there, you said about you have a YouTube channel with is it just meditations on there, or do you have other things on your YouTube as well?
A few vlogs, that was also pushing me out of my comfort zone. I was getting, some nudges from my team. So mostly meditations and about 7 vlogs where I just, 5 minutes just chatting about spiritual topics. But yeah, it's on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts.
Excellent, excellent. So you're when you first came into this work, you were working with the sort of the angelic realms. Is that still your mainstay? Still working with the angels?
I've expanded a bit. I'm now working with dragons as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. That's why I found you on Instagram. It's like, who else?
Ah.
Who else must be talking to dragons and spirit guides, but mainly angels. But I would say anyone else who wants to come in who's in my spiritual arsenal, I guess you could say. And the angels, the way they came in was so for. Can I share how it
Yeah,
was?
of course.
So I was studying hypnotherapy, spiritual things, but nothing really etheric beings yet. And I was going through a divorce, and I remember, well, it wasn't random because nothing is random. I got this email about a lady who was nearby, and she was doing an angelic meditation that night at her house. So I thought, oh, that sparked something inside me. And after that meditation, I just felt so at peace with the divorce that I remember driving home going, wow, this is such the right decision. And there's no angst, there's no guilt. And anyway, so from then on, I was studying with that lady, all about angels. I redid Reiki with my angels. And then, a few years later, dragons started coming in when I was meditating. I was like, then I thought I was weird because you still have that self doubt. And I remember going to Mount,
Always. It doesn't go away, does it?
never, ever, ever. um, so yeah, I was like, oh, dragon. Maybe I just saw something on TV and that's why it's coming into my mind's eye. But I went to Mount Shasta, in California for vacation, and we did a hike with a shaman, and she was meditating. She goes, "You had a dragon around you." Like, really? So then, of course, this external validation. I was like, oh, maybe that is true. Let me connect more with dragons, and then, of course, I learned about the ascended masters. So yeah, it's a whole arsenal of whoever is needed for what I need to do. It's, all my meditations are channels. Usually, I'm bringing the angels in, guaranteed, with all the meditations for clearing, clearing, healing, bringing the vibration up.
Excellent. Says I was sat in circle with a group of ladies this morning,
Mm.
and I've got a message. I've got a guide that I work with, and it's like trees for you, girl. You need to be working with the trees. You need to go and sit with each of the trees in the woods. It's like, oh, for God's sake, it's bloody winter. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my task over the winter, because apparently all the trees have messages and things that I need to learn and understand, and obviously then that will then get shared with the wider world as I understand it. But yeah, but apparently I'm to start working with trees.
Yeah, yeah, they're
And
wise beings for sure. Yes.
they have and spirit leads us such down, or it seems like such a winding path, doesn't it? And then we have, and yeah, I don't know about you, but I found that I do wonder, not so much now of the dragons, because it was just literally a breadcrumb after breadcrumb after breadcrumb, and literally all I could see was just following this trail of breadcrumbs.
That's the thing,
Um,
isn't it? It's never like, here's a book and this is what you should do for the next 10 years. It's not. It's like little piecemeal that drops into you. But sorry for interrupting. Go on.
no, absolutely, it is, but that's exactly what it's like.
Yeah.
And before, I always wanted to know the why, the why, the how, and the when. And the dragons have given me such a big lesson in trust, and actually just take it a step at a time. And I think probably that's a lot of our journey, isn't it? Is because going back to being the witch wound and persecution and all that type of thing. Of course, what happens, or what, I don't know if you feel the same, but of course there is no self-trust. So not only do we not have confidence or self-belief or self-esteem, but my belief, more importantly than any of those, is actually self-trust.
Mhm.
Because if we
Yes.
don't trust ourselves, then and trust what we're getting, what we're learning, what we're understanding, everything else unravels around it, I find. And that's such a big lesson to learn as self-trust. And that's one that the Dragons has taught me, to actually not have an opinion about it, Caroline. Put your opinions to bed.
Yes, don't question everything.
Trust. And it's sort of they came in with a thing of trust and observe. And that's sort of how I've done it. And yeah, it's been an incredible journey, and everybody's path is different, isn't it?
Oh yeah, for
And
sure.
how
But
we find it.
I find the same thing. Self-trust in what you're getting was the biggest thing to learn. And I even with my clients, I find they're like, but how do you know that's your higher self talking? How do you know that's an angel talking? And there's no magic switch. It's just discernment. You start to recognize different frequency and energy. And yeah, that's a huge learning curve. Absolutely self-trust. That's why when someone else says, yeah, I see that dragon, you're like, oh yes, okay. It's not just me.
Hallelujah, hallelujah. I'm not going round the bend.
No, but of course, with time, with years and experience, that becomes so much stronger and it builds your confidence in everything. Yeah.
Agreed. And because there is that element of time speeding up. Now, when my mentor started sitting in circle a lot of years ago, he's been gone 30 years. So I'm probably talking sort of 50, 60 years ago, when he first started sitting in circle. And we didn't have any of the understanding of that mind body spirit connection in those days. Not like we have now.
Mm.
And like some people would sit in circle for maybe 20 years before they even got an inkling of a message. Talk about dedication. I'd have been so bored, I'd have been long gone.
Me
But
too.
people used to sit in circle for week after week after week for years.
Wow.
And as we've sort of come up through the decades, our ability to understand and learn has speeded up so much. There's so much available to us now, from not just from the spiritual, but from science as well, and science proving what we've known forever. Um, but I think people have got a chance these days of learning tools and I don't whatever word you want to put to it, gifts or whatever, and honing those gifts. But I do wonder if sometimes the learning's too quick, because I've been on my path since I was a teenager. And I do just wonder if um the learning it's too quick. You can do your Reiki 1 and do your Reiki 2 in 2 weekends, and then you're let loose from the public. It's like, well, you
Yeah,
shouldn't do it. You shouldn't, but people know it happens.
it does. Yeah.
And I just wonder if that's happening, if there's this speeding up, it's happening too quickly. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
No, I agree with that. I mean, I started, that first energy healer I went to was in 2004. So it's been 20 years of this journey. And I do think it's too sped up. I do think there's a lot of trendy things that are, because it's also, I find, a trendy culture, I guess you could say.
Mm.
I lived in Costa Rica for a while, and that was very like cacao ceremony and plant medicine. And it was very trendy. So, and I thought, is anyone really helping them clear? Is there, I mean, my Reiki, yeah, you're right. On the weekends, you can do Reiki and it's all on Zoom. And I mean, my teacher had to do an attunement in person. I had to study it like 21 days, do self Reiki. So I do think we're losing something with all this quick fix stuff. And, not that nothing against cacao and sound baths. I think they're beautiful and relaxing, but I think we have to do more work. It's not just that can help us. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I do. I have a friend who calls it spirituality light.
Oh, okay. So now I've got a friend that calls it along the same kind of line as spiritual tourism.
Yeah.
So not just going, oh, I've gone to pyramids and I've gone to wherever, Shasta or wherever, but also that they've ticked off, I've done a cacao, or I've done ayahuasca, or I've done a sound bath. It's that sort of spiritual, comes into the same thing as that spiritual tourism. Is they're ticking it off the list, but they haven't done the depth.
Exactly. And you have to. You really, I mean, it's not comfortable. No
Oh,
way.
do you know, it's all snot and tears, isn't it?
It is. It's awful. They don't call it the dark night of the soul for no reason, it's awful. And I mean, but you get through it. That's what spirituality I think will teach us is, how to get through it, the people around us who can help us, the tools, the techniques. Yeah, it's uncomfortable for some time. But then
Yeah.
like, let's say, yes, someone's doing Reiki as an example, if they're clearing a lot of their own internal stuff, they're,
Gubbins, yeah.
yeah, they're a clearer channel to bring in a higher vibrational energy to their clients in the future. So it's benefiting everybody really to go deep within.
I
But like,
agree. And I believe we never stop learning. We should never ever. Well, my husband gets really cross with me. So I'm always looking to learn something from those that know something, that stuff that I don't know or know more than me or whatever. And he's like, you've been at this game 30 bloody years. Why do you still want? Because I love to learn. And there's
yeah,
always something that I'll go away with and go, oh my God, I really didn't know that.
exactly. Yeah, I feel
And
the
it's
same.
and it's something else that you take bring into your toolbox, or you go away and ponder, because it's just about helping all of us, whether you're a teacher or a student, and I believe we're always a teacher and always a student, that we're always growing.
Mhm.
And when you think you know it all, get off the box. You
Exactly.
need to relook. You'd have another good look at yourself,
Oh,
because
yeah.
you're going to get a dragon slap if you think you know it all.
Exactly. I had that when I was, yeah, learning things, different teachers and, workshops. And I remember one teacher saying, yeah, you're going to reach, like we talked about, the enlightenment up here. And then it's like, oh, I'm this beautiful Buddha-like person. No, that's not that. I wish that was like that, but no, we have to still be spiritual beings in a 3D world.
We
And that,
do.
and that means, yeah, it's a daily job. It's to, yes, we want to keep our inner peace, we can meditate, but we also moderate our reactions, keeping that inner peace for challenging situations.
Yeah.
And it's not that it's when you study spirituality or you work with angels that it's a charmed life. You still have to go through your challenges,
You
and I
still got to pay the bills.
got to pay the bills, you got to deal with family and everybody. And I remember, and if you're not paying attention or you're not on the right path, I get slapped too. Yes, you're right. This summer, I backed my car into a ditch. I backed into another car, and I was like, "What? There should be a beeping thing on the car. Why is it?" And I'm getting the message later in meditation after I calmed down. I was like, "Yeah, you weren't focusing, so it's your own fault." So yeah, we still get those nudges like, hey, you're not perfect. And it is a work in progress for sure. Everything that we go through is a work in progress. I lost my dad last year. I thought, oh, because I do a bit of mediumship. And then I thought, oh, I know where he is. His spirit's not gone. I have all this knowledge. It didn't, I mean, it helped, but not that much. There was still grief. There was a lot of grief,
Of course.
and now it's more coming to an acceptance, that I will see him again. But yeah, it's still a mental state of mind that you have to remember, like, okay, we
It's still
revert.
painful, isn't it?
It is, yeah. We still revert to humanness, I say.
We
But
do. We
we are.
absolutely do. My dad's just was diagnosed this summer with terminal lung cancer. And so we may or may not have him this time next year.
Yeah,
And so once I got over the initial shock, it is that you still have that human stuff you have to deal with, don't you?
do, yeah. I do think though being open to spirituality helps you deal with it better.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Agreed.
It
And it
just helps.
helps with the compassion, doesn't it, that you have for other people?
Oh yeah, absolutely, for sure. You can really understand, and the right words or the right things that people need, um, to help them or what they need to hear and guide them on their
Mm.
path. So yeah, it's a balance every day.
It's always a balance. So you obviously do energy healing, you do oracle card reading, or you know, readings when you're doing your energy healing, however it shows up.
No, I do face to face now. I've gotten over those fears.
Excellent. So how do people find you?
So I have my website, natashatomé.com. And or also on YouTube, it's also under my name, Natasha Tomé. Same thing with Spotify, guided meditations, and Apple Podcasts, guided meditations, my name. Very simple.
Really easy. Love it. Natasha, it's been, I've loved our chatty ramble.
Oh, me too. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a
Oh,
pleasure.
pleasure.
I love to
It's
talk about that stuff.
it's always good. I know it's just that no, it was nice to bring that human element into it actually, because you know, yeah, because well, dragons call us human doings because we're not human beings because we never actually be anything because we're always doing, always active. We're never
They are so
still.
wise, the dragons.
You got to love them. So thank you so much for joining me. So guys, that's the end of this episode of the Chatty Ramble. I will look forward to seeing you, chatting to you, and chatting with my next guest on the next Chatty Ramble. See you then. Take care. Big love. Bye for now.